The NFL is an ever-changing league, and there are more ways to win championships than one. And one of the best ways to win a championship is to build through the NFL draft. And the Rams this past year are an exception with trading multiple picks for good players, don't get me wrong, but the best player on that team, and Aaron Donald, believe it or not, was a first-round pick for them back in the day. And every couple of years within the NFL draft, there are prospects who emerge out of nowhere, and certainly have scouts and front offices second and third guessing what they missed on with that prospect and how that can be evaluated into their decisions with future prospects moving forward. And we're going to discuss a couple of NFL players in today's video that changed how NFL players at their position are evaluated within the NFL draft process and why that is. It's not just because they are successful, but how they are successful in addition to that. And there's a lot to dive into, and I'm really excited to share with you guys. So without further ado, let's begin. And we're going to start today's video with two of the best players in the NFL, and they are Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And in an era where highlight reel plays go more viral than ever before with YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, the throws each of these guys make, and on a consistent basis at that, certainly plays into it. They can each throw the ball a country mile and have led their teams to deep playoff runs over the past few years. We'll discuss Patrick first since he was drafted first between the two back in 2017, and this was a guy who in a lot of ways is similar to Malik Willis right now. Not exact comparisons to be clear, but with the project label, and he'll need a year to develop, and of course, the huge arm. And the Chiefs had a QB guru, and still do for that matter, in Andy Reid, and everyone was shocked on draft night back in 2017 when the Chiefs went and made a huge jump from 27 to 10, in which they give up a future first-round pick to, ironically, Josh's team, the Buffalo Bills. Prior to Patrick Mahomes, the quarterbacks out of the Big 12 were generally all summarized as not pro-ready, not able to read an NFL defense, and usually a product of the air raid systems. Think Graham Harrell back in his day from Texas Tech, and Case Keenum as well. Though Houston wasn't a Big 12 school, it applies because of the system Case ran at Houston. Now, Patrick is obviously a lot more talented than either of these guys, but Patrick was the guy to break the mold of scouting quarterbacks in this system, and the traits he has show up every Sunday. Rocket arm, can throw from every angle, and by the way, side note, if you guys did not know, his dad played in the MLB, I just wanted to toss that out there, and now with quarterbacks seemingly over the past 5 years, we went from looking for the next Peyton Manning with the mechanics and the precision passing accuracy to more of an approach where we ask the questions, what is this guy good at? What are his strengths? And with Patrick, he's a gambler, but a lot of the time when he gambles, he's right. And there may be a more technically sound quarterback out there than Patrick Mahomes and not be as good as he is, but 5 to 10 years ago, that player probably would have been taken over Patrick, where now we're doing a lot of betting on what they can be, and Mahomes is a big reason why. As for Josh, it's a lot of the same thing, and Josh is a player who came from the University of Wyoming and completed just 56% of his passes during his time there, but as we know, he can throw the ball from downtown Buffalo to downtown Toronto, and through hard work from several people, of course Josh himself included in this, he's become a significantly more accurate passer at the NFL level, and the team invested a shit ton of resources into him, and Buffalo is generally viewed as the way to build around an NFL quarterback on the rookie scale. Now, were there trying times with Josh, given he was a project quarterback going from Wyoming to playing Bill Belichick's defense twice a year? Hell yeah, there was, and Bills fans would acknowledge that as well. But both of these guys, in a lot of ways, the off-script plays, run around, then flick your wrist and throw the ball 55 yards downfield, whether it is to former teammate Tyreek Hill or Stephon Diggs now, is a lot more common than ever before. And like in the NBA, how teams always tried to find the next Dirk Nowitzki, the European big man who can shoot and do everything Dirk could do well, teams are going to emulate that in the NFL and try to do the same thing as long as these guys are dominating, which, by the way, should be a while. But because of these guys' success, we went from let's try and find a player that would fit our system to screw it, this guy has talent and we are going to do absolutely everything to build around this quarterback because we believe in his tools and his game. And it's worked out extremely well for both franchises. The next player may be a surprise, but believe it or not, it's George Kittle. When looking at George as a tight end, he's a great receiving tight end, but he's one hell of a blocker. And we always discuss, and especially with the first two guys in today's video, about landing spots for players to maximize their ability and potential at the NFL level, but George, like Josh and Patrick, landed in the best place possible for him. George went to college at the University of Iowa, and if there's anything Iowa prospects know how to do, and George is certainly not an exception here, it's how to block. And I'm sure most of us have seen them, but there are NFL mic'd up clips of George getting hyped as hell for the team to run the football, and in a lot of ways he is a sixth lineman for San Francisco. But due in large part to his success, tight ends are evaluated differently now than they were when he was in the draft process. Now, as simple as this sounds, there's a lot of people that love height, weight, speed guys from tight ends because NFL coaches always feel they can make a player better and have them become a great asset to their franchise. You see it all the time where guys have physical traits you simply can't teach and they get drafted very high because of it. But with George, he was a 6'4", 245-pound tight end who ran a 4.52 40, which is in the 90th percentile for tight ends, despite his height being in the 39th and weight being in the 23rd percentiles. What is important to note is George was still 6'4" and nearly 250 pounds, so it's not like he was a little guy compared to other tight ends, and we're not talking a ginormous difference here. But because of how successful he's been, it really wouldn't surprise me at all to see someone like Jelani Woods from the University of Virginia be picked a lot earlier than previously expected, because he is 6'7", 255, and ran a 4.61 40 and did 24 reps on the bench. For reference, Kittle did 18 reps on the bench. Of course, you have to be a good football player at the end of the day, please understand that, and George is an elite football player. But what he's accomplished in the first 5 years of his career is, well, a shit ton. If you're thinking this because of the height, weight, speed factor, I will address this. Kyle Pitts wasn't taken 4th overall last year simply because of George Kittle. He was taken that high because he himself is a very good football player, and he earned everything with what he did at the University of Florida. All the physical traits from Kyle is a bonus, but when you look at this draft class of tight ends, they're now looking at speed more than ever before, and a lot of that can be attributed to both the way the NFL is moving, but also because of how successful George has become as a member of the San Francisco 49ers. So we've discussed a couple of players that changed the NFL draft process for the good, but now we're going to discuss one who changed it for the lesser of his position. And he's still a good player, don't get me wrong, but it is Quinnen Williams of the New York Jets. Quinnen was selected number 3 overall by New York back in 2019, and when you're taken that high, especially as an interior defensive lineman, you're expected to be either the next or very close to the next Aaron Donald, and while Quinnen is a good player, I think even Jets fans would agree he probably was not worth the 3rd overall pick when looking back on it. And there hasn't been an interior defensive lineman taken that high since, and Will Anderson may be the one to break that next year from Alabama, but a lot of things can happen in a year, and don't bank on that for sure happening. Derek Brown was taken in the top 7 in 2020 for Carolina, and, well, has not been worth that high of a selection. Don't get me wrong, interior defensive line is extremely important, and if a team has a weak IDL, interior defensive line, then they'll get gashed all day long with the ground game, and you'll know that pretty quickly. But to suggest it's worth a top 3 overall pick wouldn't be fair either, and aside from Will Anderson, I don't think we're going to see a player selected in the top 5 or 10 with how the NFL is going for quite some time. And again, Anderson is going to be an outlier with this. I would like to get something clear though. If Aaron Donald was in this class and you knew he was going to be close to the player he is, he would without a doubt be the number 1 overall pick, but because you never know with draft prospects, it's really hard to justify the gamble on a player that high, because more often than not, teams selecting this high are drafting this high for a reason, and while this admittedly isn't fair to say this is solely Quinnen's fault, because it is definitely not, the Jets hadn't made the playoffs in the 8 previous years to selecting Quinnen Williams, and haven't made the playoffs since drafting him either. Again, that obviously doesn't fall solely on his shoulders, but the point stands. He's not dominant to the degree where the Jets go from 11-6 to 4-13 and have the worst rushing defense in the league without him, because of his impact on each and every play. So in that way, the selection of Quinnen at number 3 overall has impacted the draft, as with Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt, the 2 defensive linemen from Georgia, I'd be surprised if either of those guys are taken in the top 12 picks in next week's draft, and I would argue Jordan is a bit of a unicorn given he is 6'6", 340, and ran a sub 4.8 40-yard dash, which would only incentivize teams to draft him more than ever before. I like the big guys on the IDL like Quinnen, Jordan Davis, and plenty of others, but unless I'm absolutely positive a Defensive Player of the Year award is in their future, and I'm a GM coming off of a 3-win season, it's very hard to justify spending that high of a pick on a defensive tackle. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, now is the time I ask you to please leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as it would truly mean the world. And until next time, as always, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.